Our next item for consideration is H.R. 5140, the District of Columbia Juvenile Sentencing Reform Act. The clerk will please designate the bill.
H.R. 5140, the District of Columbia Juvenile Sentencing Reform Act, a bill to lower the age at which a minor may be tried as an adult for certain criminal offenses in the District of Columbia to 14 years of age.
Without objection, the bill shall be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. Without objection to ordered, the chair recognizes himself to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute. The clerk will please designate the amendment.
An amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 5140 is offered by Mr. Comer of Kentucky.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the substitute will be considered as original text for the purposes of further amendment. I now recognize the sponsor of the bill, Mr. Gill from Texas, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your seriousness in bringing law and order back to Washington, D.C. Mr. Chairman, the American people have a right to live in a country where we aren't being butchered and robbed by career criminals that Democrat jurisdictions refuse to get off of our streets. We have a right to be able to take public transportation without being murdered. We have a right to be able to walk down the streets without being robbed or raped. We don't have to live under this left-wing anarcho-tyranny where criminals terrorize innocent people, and that includes juveniles. In 2021, Pakistani immigrant Mohammed Anwar was murdered by 2 juveniles during a carjacking. He was an Uber Eats driver trying to provide a better life for himself here in the U.S. The 2 girls, one of which was 15 at the time of the murder, will both be released onto our streets in a few short years when they turn 21. Mr. Chairman, the purpose of our justice system is not to rehabilitate criminals. It is to give criminals their just desserts, to lock them up and get them off of our streets so that they cannot harm innocent people. Mr. Chairman, the number of juveniles arrested in D.C. has gone up each year since 2020. More than 2,000 juveniles were arrested in 2023 and 2024. In the first 6 months of 2025, there have been 900 arrests of juveniles. Many of these are repeat offenders. In 2024, nearly 200 juveniles arrested for violent crimes had prior violent crime arrests. 52% of all armed robbery arrests in 2024 were juveniles, and 53% of all carjackings in 2025, as of August, were from juveniles in this city. We do not have to live like this. We do not have to allow thugs of any age to terrorize us. Mr. Chair, currently minors 16 years and old and older are eligible to have their case moved up to criminal court and to be tried as an adult in D.C. This bill lowers that age to 14 years old, making 14 and 15-year-olds who commit violent crimes eligible to be charged as adults. Violent crime refers to murder, first-degree sexual assault, burglary in the first degree, and robbery while armed, for instance. These are violent, heinous, horrific offenses that require stronger sentencing to reflect the seriousness of the crimes committed. I urge my colleagues to support this bill and to charge juveniles who commit serious violent crimes as adults. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to strongly oppose this Sentencing Reform Act that's in front of us. Of course, this would lower the age of eligibility for children to be tried as adults in D.C. from 16 to 14 years for, of course, certain criminal offenses. Now, I just want to be clear, a 14-year-old is not an adult. A 14-year-old is barely out of middle school. And there are good public safety reasons to avoid charging juveniles as adults, but especially I want to talk about what's in front of us right now. Now, youth charged adults are more likely to reoffend than youth processed in juvenile courts. That is a fact consistently supported by research when you look at what's happening across the country. Now, the Centers for Disease Control Task Force on Community Preventative Services reviewed decades and decades of research and also concluded that sending youth to the adult system actually increases the rates of violence, doesn't decrease the rates of violence. A report from the National Research Council supported a policy of keeping punishment proportional with age to prevent additional offending, which this bill would make fundamentally impossible across the district. This legislation would also deepen the racial disparities that currently exist in the district's juvenile justice system. And like other bills that are in front of us, we have to come back to the community. Why do we keep trying to take away the ability for DC to govern itself? And let's also look at the folks that make up this community. They should be given the ability to govern themselves. I also want to push back on some of the characterizations that have been made about this bill. Now, we know that compared to states, the district already has the highest youth incarceration rate in the U.S. We know that as a fact. It's more than 3 times higher than the national average. This bill once again interferes with DC's self-government and their work in trying to reduce this. This bill would not make DC safer. It would deepen existing racial disparities and push more young people deeper into the adult juvenile system. We, as a group, as a body, should urge all of our colleagues to vote no on this legislation. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Norton from Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I strongly oppose this undemocratic and paternalistic bill, which amends D.C. law. The over 700,000 D.C. residents, the majority of whom are black and brown, are capable and worthy of governing themselves. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record letters opposing this bill from D.C. Mayor Marion Bowser, the entire D.C. Council, and D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwab.
Without objection to ordered.
While Congress has the authority to legislate on local matters, it does not have the duty to do so. In Federalist 43, James Madison said of D.C. residents, and I quote, "A municipal legislature for local purposes derived from their own suffrages will of course be allowed them," close quote. Since 1802, Congress has created different local governments for D.C. In 1953, the Supreme Court held that, quote, "There is no constitutional barrier to delegation by Congress to the District of Columbia for full legislative power," close quote. The substance of this bill is irrelevant since there is never justification for Congress to legislate on D.C. local matters, but I will briefly discuss it. I strongly oppose charging 14-year-olds as adults. However, whether to reduce or increase the minimum wage to be charged as an adult should be a decision for D.C. alone. I respect D.C.'s home rule. In a series of cases since 2005, the Supreme Court has recognized that children are, quote, "constitutionally different from adults for the purpose of sentencing," end quote. In these cases, the court noted that childhood is marked by, quote, "rashness, proclivity for risk, and inability to assess consequences," close quote. The court said in its decisions, quote, rested not only on common sense, but on what any parent knows, but on science and social science as well, close quote. This bill is both cruel and counterproductive. Most incarcerated people eventually come home. The evidence shows that Congress charged as adults, that children charged as adults are more likely to reoffend and be violent than children charged as juveniles. I urge members to vote no on this bill, and I yield back.
Jill Lee yields back. Before I recognize Ms. Simon, I ask unanimous consent to enter the following press release from the United States Attorney's Office, District of Columbia, into the record. On June 30th, 21-year-old Eric Tarpinian, an intern with the House of Representatives, was murdered in D.C. We now know from U.S. Attorney Janine Pirro that the two 17-year-old suspects recently arrested had a documented history of family court violence. Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Ms. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. And I would like to extend my remarks today in memory of James R. Bell, who's the founder of the Hayward Burns Institute and one of the nation's premier minds who sought justice for young people who were and have been and will continue to be systematized in the adult courts. Mr. Chair, I strongly oppose H.R. 5140, the Juvenile Justice Sentencing Act, for many reasons. We're talking about 14-year-olds. In fact, my 14-year-old is in the chamber right now. She forgot her keys. She's a ninth grader. She's a child. She's a child. H.R. 5140 would allow children as young as my youngest daughter would deny them the protections of the juvenile court and place them in the adult criminal justice system. To pass this bill would be to unravel one of the most important reforms in American history. In 1899, this nation created the first juvenile court in Cook County, Illinois. We did so because Americans recognized what science and common sense has made plain, that children are not adults. The principle became law because we knew that across the country, we knew that transforming young people out of literally horrific behavior requires rehabilitation. The founders of the juvenile justice system believe that rehabilitation is not a weakness, but the strongest form of accountability. The data has borne that out. The Centers for Disease Control found that young people transferred into adult courts are 34% more likely to prevent violent crimes upon release than their counterparts who move through the juvenile court system. The Department of Justice has confirmed repeatedly that the transfer laws do not reduce crime. They, in fact, increase it. The claim that prosecuting children as adults and putting them in adult prisons, cages, defers and deters violence is not supported by a single credible study. True accountability means facing the harm that has been caused, making amends, and working through treatment as children, through education, through hardcore accountability, and behavior change. States like Missouri and Connecticut have pioneered therapeutic models where even young people committed of the most serious and violent crimes receive intensive supervision, counseling, and restorative justice processes that include and center the victims. The result has resulted in lower recidivism rates, greater public safety, and more lives redeemed. That is accountability that works. This bill does not advance safety. It is bringing about more regression in a system that has continuously failed. Around the world, democracies like Germany, democracies like Sweden and Japan invest heavily in rehabilitation. Their children come home safer and their communities are stronger because of it, because of that commitment to rehabilitation. These countries that lock 14-year-old children up in adult prisons, they're not models of justice, not models of safety. These countries that put children into cages, they are warnings. And I know what real safety looks like. Over the last 3 decades, I helped design and implement initiatives that have cut youth recidivism by over 70%. Most recently, I led a comprehensive plan that reduced crime in our local transit system that has decreased crime by 40%. These results don't come from abandoning children to adult jails. They come from believing that young people, even the ones who commit the most heinous and serious crimes, can be held accountable and that these young people can change and make amends. The choice is up to us, and the choice is stark. Either we honor the founding promise of the juvenile justice system, or we join the ranks of nations around the world that treat children as disposable. Either we follow evidence and history towards safer communities, or we legislate out of fear and condemn children to cycles of crime. This bill is not justice. In fact, it is a retreat from it. I urge my colleagues to reject H.R. 5140, and I'll yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Any other members seek recognition? Seeing none, the question is now on favorably reporting H.R. 5140. Oh. The question is now on the amendment in the nature of a substitute. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The question is now on favorably reporting H.R. 5140 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The bill is ordered favorably reported.
Recorded vote, Mr. Chairman.